into 3 parts for you. First, leaving on a jet plane. I'm going to tell you some of the information about Patagonia, including its geography, topography, and a bit even about its history. Next, climb every mountain. Here I'm going to take you through my journey in Patagonia, which ended up being about 5 weeks. I'll talk about some important landmarks and pit stops along the way. I'll also share some challenges and successes. Lastly, homeward bound. This is where we'll all come together at the end. If you ever think of a question at any point during the presentation, please type it into the chat section. I'll answer all of them upon conclusion. And of course, I'll share my email address in the chat so that, if you think of something even, a few days after, or, just simply want to say hello in the future, my email address is there in the chat for you as of now. All right, leaving on a jet plane. And that is the shot, the selfie I took as I was leaving to head to Patagonia. As you may remember from my last presentation, I am from Des Plaines, so not too far from you, probably in Decatur there. I used to teach public education, kindergarten, first and second grade, and then decided I need to travel. I need to see the world. So during that time, about 5 years ago now, I've seen a total of 42 countries plus Puerto Rico. And in 2019, I spent the entire year in South America. So we're going to be focusing on mid-May through mid-June, those 5 weeks that I was lucky enough to be in Patagonia. I'm broadcasting to you from my apartment here in Evanston, which I was just telling Alex before the presentation, gets the most snow award thanks to that trusty lake effect. So fortunately, everyone is safe and healthy around here, and I hope the same for all of you. Most of the pictures you're going to see tonight I took with an iPhone XS Max, and that's the phone that Apple released just about 2 years ago now. I mention this because I think sometimes people imagine you have to lug around a big expensive camera, and that could be true for some people, but I just found this point and shoot method to work quite well. I took over 2,000 pictures in Patagonia. I had to boil it down to my favorite 10%, which is what I'll be showing you tonight. And on occasion, you're going to see pictures sent to me by friends, fellow travelers, as well as a few pictures that I found on a couple of Patagonia blogs and sites. So why would I do a year, 5 weeks in Patagonia, an entire hour on just this region? Well, as I think I'm going to illustrate to you, it's a photographer's dream. Great hiking opportunities, wonderful place to be physically active. Part of the appeal to it to me is how remote and untouched it is. So it's almost this challenge calling out to travelers like, come and get me. And I am known for accepting most challenges. And we're gonna just see a lot of different topographical features like blue glaciers, majestic mountains, golden grasslands. It does not end in Patagonia. And lastly, it was highly recommended by other travelers. Fellow backpackers said, run, don't walk to Patagonia. I wanted to whet your appetite with a short video montage of what we're going to experience the next 55 minutes. that is from a Patagonia blog called Venture Patagonia. You may have recognized some important landmarks, which we're going to delve into. But first, let's talk about Patagonia's history. About 500 years ago, Portuguese explorer Magellan Ferdinand did discover Patagonia. He's credited with that. Also naming the region Patagon. He used this term to describe the native people who he thought to be giants. So yes, they were a bit taller than the average European of the time. So, you know, I suppose that's what led him to label them that way. Eventually, this myth of roaming giants around Patagonia was put to rest. However, the name of Patagonia stuck. So there you have that. And the natives he first encountered were the Tehuelche natives, who have been living in Patagonia since approximately 10,000 BC. The Tehuelche are nomadic hunter-gatherers who hunt the local animals, birds, fish, and more. They also have elaborate religious ceremonies and deep beliefs in their faith as well. Now, come the middle of the 19th century, the Chileans, Argentines, and Europeans quickly and aggressively colonized Patagonia, which sadly resulted in the decline of the Tehuelches. Today, about 5% of Chileans and Argentines live in Patagonia. Fortunately for us, one of the big reasons it has a thriving economy is tourism. Other important economic factors, it does well with sheep farming, fishing, and even oil. Now, a bit about the geography and topography. You can take a look, of course, we are going to be in South America for the evening. In fact, the southern fifth of it. And that path is exactly the one that I traveled. And there's kind of a close-up of it. I started in the very south and worked my way north. Maybe the biggest misconception about Patagonia is that it's a country, when in fact it's not. It is a region that's governed by both Argentina and Chile. And about 90% of it is governed by Argentina, with the remainder belonging to Chile. Another wonderful feature about Patagonia, the southern section of the Andes Mountains, which is the world's longest mountain range, cuts straight through it and creates some really awe-inspiring, breathtaking views. It's roughly the size of Egypt at about 400,000 square miles. And just for reference, Texas is about 3/4 the size of Patagonia. Now, on the Argentine side, Patagonia is largely barren, whereas to the west, the Chilean portion has much more of the animal life and vegetation. So kind of a yin and yang of this region. Many volcanoes, both active and dormant, that we'll get to hear about and explore tonight. All right, the meat and potatoes of the evening: climb every mountain. So there are a few options for arriving to Patagonia. If you come in through Santiago, which is the capital of Chile, you're going to fly to Puerto Montt, and then you'll likely travel straight south from that northern point. However, if you're coming in from the Argentina side, you may also choose to fly from Buenos Aires to Bariloche, and again, continue south. I kind of did the opposite of those two. As I mentioned, I started in the southernmost city in the world as I flew from the capital of Buenos Aires to Ushuaia. And they call that the end of the world because it is the southernmost city. You might get some good deals on the Skyscanner app or the Hopper app. These basically track previously searched flights and will alert you if the flight that you were looking at or the dates that you were considering, if there's an increase in price or, of course, a decrease. As promised, we're going to start in Ushuaia. Now, this is basically one of the main starting points, launching points to Antarctica. So if you've ever met anybody who's done an Antarctica cruise, they very likely left out of one of the ports in Ushuaia. Another big draw in Ushuaia is Parque Nacional Tierra del Fuego. And I enjoyed this park with a fellow hosteler, a traveler who's actually Brazilian. And Renato and I enjoyed a full day of flat hiking along the Beagle Channel. This is a really unique national park because it's the first shoreline national park in the entire country. So many beautiful features, including waterfalls and mountains, which we see in the background there. And a bird watcher's dream, almost 100 different species of birds to spot in the park. Weather can get a bit dicey there. Fortunately for us, it was a clear day. You know, you just probably needed a light coat, which we certainly had, and just got to kind of walk. I think we walked for 9 or 10 hours this day, just admiring the local sights and really having this big wide open space to ourselves. Part of our walk also included El Tren del Fin del Mundo, which is the end of the world train. This used to be a functioning train that transported timber from one part of Ushuaia to the other, and then about 25 years ago it was converted into a tourist destination. And instead of taking the train, Renato and I decided to walk along the tracks to sort of take in these beautiful sights more slowly and to really digest and process the awe-inspiring sights in front of our eyes. These are wild horses, which are protected by the Argentine government, so it's great to just see them free roaming and grazing in different parts of Patagonia. Now we're going to get on a ship and get out onto the Beagle Channel to see one of the symbols of Ushuaia, which is Le Eclairis Lighthouse. Here you'll see humpback whales breaching from maybe a couple dozen or a couple hundred feet from your boat. Also large colonies of seals, sea lions, and birds that are braving terribly cold waters, fierce wind. They're looking for food. They are keeping warm. It's just amazing, the speed of wind. I took a video, but if I showed it to you, it would just probably blow out your speakers. So I'll leave that for you to explore on your own. Now, getting around Patagonia, of course, being so remote, there are so many challenges that you have to consider. This is not going to be always so easy. I think one of the main reasons is that there's basically no airports. So bus travel is the best way to get from one part of Patagonia to another. You can also rent a car. Just keep in mind there are hundreds of miles of unpaved roads and limited gas stations. So it's certainly, with some planning and organization, not a problem. But if you don't want to worry about any of that, you could also hire a driver and their car. These are called remis, and those are available for, of course, a premium price. Now we're going to head a little north here, northwest in fact, to Punta Arenas, which is on the Chilean side of the border. So we're going to be border hopping all throughout the evening. Very easy to do so. They just stamp your passport and you as an American get, I think it's 90 days as a tourist per time you enter a country, which essentially means unlimited travel in Patagonia. Punta Arenas, very colorful town full of street art, mosaics there. Young artists will kind of try to get discovered by doing some work for the community, maybe getting their next big break that way. A lot of people go to Punta Arenas because of Isla Magdalena. This is along the Strait of Magellan. You can't visit it in the winter, so just keep that in mind. The Magellanic penguins migrate here in the summer, in fact, to raise their young. And due to global warming, about 10 years ago, a major drought swept through the island and killed off almost half of the mating pairs of the penguins, as well as much of the vegetation, and that has since led to lower breeding success. So the numbers are going back up steadily, but they really are at the mercy of Mother Nature. If you're a penguin fan like I am, you can also visit Parque Pingüino Rey, which is the King Penguin Park. And I was able to observe the only colony of king penguins in South America from a distance. And of course, the reason for this is to not disturb the penguins as they feed their babies. They establish near beaches as well as among grasslands to reproduce. They are seafood lovers, as you can see there. And fun fact about Patagonia, there are nearly as many penguins as people. So it's about 1.7 million penguins compared to about 2 million locals. And this is a video I took through the telescope here of mother penguins feeding their young. And I kind of like how the mother penguin's like, what? There's no more food. Go get your own. You're probably not surprised to know that the official language of Patagonia is Spanish. However, I think it's important to mention the minority languages of Mapudungun, Patagonian Welsh, and German. Now, Mapudungun is the language of the native Twelches who Magellan first encountered. However, the reason for the Welsh and German influence is, of course, because when they arrived in about 1850, of course, they brought along with them their native languages. I wanted to teach you a few Spanish phrases just in case you eventually get to Patagonia, or if you just want a little brush up. So the first is hello, how are you? And in Spanish, that is translated to hola, ¿cómo estás? So I'll say it and then you repeat after me. Hola, ¿cómo estás? Okay, all right. I'm imagining that I can hear you. I'm just very confident. Maybe let's take it back to an easier one. Let's try thank you, which you probably know is gracias, and you have to really roll your R with this. Gracias. All right, your turn. All right, better. Now the last one, this is if you're a little flirty, maybe at a bar and you make eyes with someone, you might want to compliment them and say, you have the most beautiful eyes in the world. However, do we say this in Spanish? Brian, please tell us. Well, tienes los ojos más hermosos del mundo. And now we'll put it all together. Tienes los ojos más hermosos del mundo. All right, I think I hear some Casanovas in the virtual audience this evening. Awesome work, everybody. All right, let's go to Puerto Natales. So we're still in Chile here, but you're gonna see just these couple hundred miles really makes such a difference geographically as we head to Torres del Paine for a day tour, which includes a stop at Laguna Amarga. I love the reflection there, of course, of the mountain on the lagoon. Amarga means bitter in Spanish, and it actually gets its name from the high salinity of the lagoon. These are the waterfalls of the Paine River, so Cascada del Rio Paine. Paine means blue in native Tehuelche, and this is a very important river to the local people. So as far as, you know, farming is concerned and catching fish, of course, this is very much a lifeblood of this community. Here's probably the most iconic part of all of Patagonia. It's Mirador Base Las Torres. And what a wonderful experience this was. It's a full day experience, round trip, about 8 hours. And, you know, it's a hike through the valleys as well as some rugged landscapes. So it's moderately challenging. It's certainly no walk through the park, but you are going to be rewarded with just really unique and special sights. You're kind of groggy as your tour guide picks you up at your accommodation and you know, at like 4:30 or 5 in the morning, you're getting to this park, you're kind of like, oh gosh, what have I gotten myself into? But then as you are slowly climbing, the sun is rising, casting this beautiful glow on the mountains as well as the lakes below, illuminating just everything around you. And you simply get inspired. Now, keep in mind, there are strong winds with a quick elevation gain of about 3,000 feet. So that can be tough for some travelers. I don't have any issues with acclimating to that, but some folks do. So just have pills on hand, and there are other things like teas that you can drink along the way if you feel nauseous. Steep climb to the towers, that final stretch, so be prepared for that. But then you're of course rewarded with these snowy towering peaks and the turquoise blue lagoon in the foreground. And what a great spot to enjoy lunch. It was a little cold, a little windy, but you kind of forget about all of that when you know, this is where you're enjoying your meal. That's one for the scrapbook for me, for sure. And we were lucky to get a clear day. And I do mean lucky when I say that, because that is no guarantee. It's about a 1 in 3 chance that you'll get that. And you know, by the time you return, it's the same path that you've just hiked, but now the sun is all the way up. So you sort of get almost like a reinterpretation of the land that you've just climbed and hiked. New colors popping out, and maybe new features that you didn't see the first time around. The W Trek is very famous in this part of Patagonia. You can take, it could be 5 days depending on the pace that you go. It's nearly 50 miles, so you do the math, it could be about maybe 10 to 15 miles a day. This is the W Trek, and that final leg of the W is where Mirador Base Las Torres is located. Of course, my journey was only a day. However, if you want to even amp it up more, you could take the O circuit, which could even take a week and a half. It's 80 miles long. The major benefit here is many, I should say fewer people, just simply because it's so off the beaten path. And you are just rewarded with kind of this backcountry beauty for, you know, going on this great adventure. You're pitching a tent every night, and you're likely packing your own food. You can see the difference between the O Trek and the W. I'll do that one more time. Now, as I mentioned, I didn't get to do the O circuits. However, my friends Lily Taylor and Melanie Tucci, who I first met in Colombia, which is far north of Patagonia in South America, they did get to do the O, and they were kind enough to put together a short video to share their experiences with you.
Hi, I'm Melanie.
And I'm Lily. In 2019, we set off on an 8-month backpacking trip around South America, and we ended with 2 months in Patagonia.
One of the highlights was the 8-day, 80-mile O Trek in Torres del Paine National Park in Chile. Yes, you heard right. We hiked for 8 days straight and averaged about 4 hours of hiking per day.
As soon as we started walking, we could feel the weight of our backpacks and realize maybe bringing all of our own food wasn't such a good idea, especially when we arrived at the first campsite and we could buy pizza.
But it was so worth it. This trek really has it all. Glaciers, jagged peaks, beaches, gigantic suspension bridges, and great infrastructure like bathrooms and hotels along the way. If that's not enough, the water in Patagonia is so clean, you can drink directly from the glacial streams.
Hiking for 8 days is an amazing bonding experience. We made friends, we cooked together at night, and we looked out for one another on the trail. Finishing the trek with everyone on day 8 was such an accomplishment.
If you get the chance to hike the O Trek, we highly recommend it. We even met a guy who was hiking for the first time in his entire life, so you can do it.
Feel free to reach out to us with any questions.
Happy travels!
Now, these ladies are sweet as pie, but they are also tough as nails. They are just really inspiring travelers. I'm so lucky our paths crossed, and I really appreciate them taking the time to share that information. And of course, there they are, enjoying the towers themselves. And you can see that beautiful sunrise lights, just so magnificent. They are, you know, one of the big reasons I would consider going back to Patagonia to do the O trek. Now, as far as safety is concerned, fortunately, crime is virtually non-existent there. In fact, it's extremely welcoming of female, solo, and family travelers. So even little 4-year-olds are doing some of these hikes, and you know, you're kind of just like, okay, well, if she can do it, then I definitely can do it, you know. So you kind of get a second wind and a bit inspired from these little travelers making it look so easy. Of course, use common sense when you come across any type of wildlife. Don't provoke animals. Hydrate if you are hiking. You know, pack healthy snacks. And as far as food is concerned, some people stay away from street food because, you know, they're worried about maybe getting food poisoning. I personally love street food. I just choose stalls that are really busy, which usually means fresh ingredients, fresh water, and it's just a fun, cheap way to practice the local language, interact with you know, fellow Patagonians, or I should say locals, and just trying lots of different flavors. So you know, use your own judgment though, of course, on that. If you do go to Patagonia, definitely get the medical evacuation you know, checked off in your travel insurance. Get that option, just because with how remote it is, God forbid something bad happens, that could literally save your life. Now I want to take you to a really special place called El Calafate. We're back on the Argentine side if you're keeping track. And I'd like to mention with El Calafate that the blueness is not enhanced. None of my pictures are enhanced. It's just kind of a bit of an optical illusion with the clear waters, you know, in relation to the crystal clear glaciers and the blue sky. So that's sort of how the guides explained it to me on the Lago Argentino tour. This lake is the largest in the country. It's recommended to do a full day cruise. In fact, that's the only option. And it's just this expanse of ice, and it's so rugged. It's so alone, and you're just inspired by these glaciers from afar. And of course, up close, and just sort of how the light plays with the glaciers and you know, the different hues of the water, the trees. It's all just such a painting come to life, I suppose. Now, one of the major glaciers there is Spegazzini, and our captain got us quite close to the glacier, and we witnessed some calving, which is basically where ice falls directly off of the glacier itself. And he was able to cast a fishing net to pull in some of the ice that had just calved. And of course, we dorky tourists got to hold some of the ice just long enough before frostbite set in. So that was kind of fun. And I wanted to show you a video panoramic view of the Spegazzini. Totally stunning. Another one, Perito Moreno. Just take a look at how tall it is and how far back it goes. This is UNESCO listed, which means it is protected by the United Nations. It's the third largest freshwater reserve in the entire world, not in South America, but the world. So quite a unique place for that. You're going to witness more calving. Fear not, this is one of the only glaciers left in the world that is not retreating, so it's actually maintaining an equilibrium since it's accumulating mass at a rate similar to its loss. So big, in fact, that you can hike it. So just a short little boat ride across the water. and a small tour group of maybe 12 people, plus a tour guide, or actually a couple of tour guides. They give you crampons for your hiking boots so that you don't slip and fall. Even with those on, you really do have to watch your step, because it's just unpredictable terrain. It can change quickly. Sometimes the wind comes through. Cold, bitter, really a treacherous climb and hike, I have to be honest. Very happy I did it, even if my lips were a bit blue there. However, you warm right up at the end, because the guides take ice directly from the glacier. They plop them in a glass, and then they pour you a nice whiskey on the rocks. And that's a local Patagonian whiskey. And of course, those fresh glacier cubes just really contribute nicely to that, that drink. You may be familiar with gauchos. These are ranchers of Patagonia, almost like farmers, but you're going to find out that they're, you know, they have their own identity. This is still seen as a respectable profession of the locals. You might recognize them wearing their leather boots, their neck scarves, and ponchos. They do rear livestock, and they're known for being tough yet hospitable. And I was lucky enough to experience that firsthand on a private tour of Estancia Rio Mitre. And this is going to be, you're going to see pictures here that were taken close to where the title slide of this lecture was. So quite a special spot. These two brothers are gauchos. They inherited the ranch from their father after he passed. To keep it in the family, to keep the dream alive, they picked me up from my accommodation in their pickup truck, drove me back to their working estancia, which is at the foot of these mountains, which of course we can see in the background and also the foreground. And they're pretty much at Perito Moreno's back door, which it was just so hard for me to comprehend that they had literally grown up here, been raised here, made their living here, and these are, you know, the physical, you know, the geography that they're rewarded with. I felt a very strong connection with nature, not only here, but all throughout Patagonia. And, you know, as they get you to the ranch, they pour you a nice hot cup of coffee that's boiling over the open fire. They also pour mate, which is a tea, very popular with Argentines in particular, the mate tea. And like I said, the livestock, very much a factor. There are the cows grazing, some friendly, charming goats, curious about me, this visitor from the other side of the world. And then I got to meet my horse and take an hour-and-a-half horseback riding tour with one of the brothers, as he gave me this unbelievable tour of the estancia. And we made it to this pit stop. Good time to pose for a picture. It was really cold. It was extremely cold. Just there was no, you know, tree cover, so the wind was just gusting right through. My feet, even though I had 2 or 3 pairs of socks on with boots, were just ice cold. But you get to warm right back up at the farmhouse as they prepare you an asado steak lunch. And of course, you know where that steak comes from, one of their cows. And they poured me a nice glass of local Argentine Malbec, which is probably the most popular red wine grape, the varietal that does quite well there in Patagonia. And talking a bit about the flora of Patagonia, it's best to categorize it into regions. So the first is the pre-Andean shrubland. Those are calafate berries on the left, if you're curious. These are found along the riverbanks and edges of the lakes. So this particular type of vegetation. And they have developed the ability to save water for long periods of time and survive in harsh conditions. This is Darwin's fungus on the left, growing on a tree there, in the region known as the Magellanic deciduous forest. So these forests line the gorges and hillsides of different parts of Patagonia. And of course, trees, shrubs, and lichens predominantly compose these forests. With Patagonian steppes, these are large areas that are made up of shrubs and tuft grasses. They're also resistant to harsh weather, so I think you're hearing a theme here, just really how tough the vegetation not only is, but has to be in order to survive. It's just the only way that you're going to see greenery around there. In the Andean desert, you might be lucky enough to find these devil's strawberries. And of course, the vegetation here, tolerant to low temperatures and high precipitation. But the majority of the trees are stunted, and you'll see shrubs like this growing on rocks all throughout the Andean desert portion. So just kind of fun to be on the lookout for all the different types of flora. And of course, you notice quite a difference from the southernmost point of Patagonia. And of course, now as we start to get more in the central part and to the northern section. Kind of the bridge of that is El Chalten on the Argentine side. El Chalten is famous for hikes. So this little town square has about 2 restaurants, maybe 1 hotel, 2 hostels, a single grocery store. And from the town center are these different famous hikes, which come out of the town center almost like spokes on a bicycle wheel. Now, I got here midday, so I decided to do one of the shorter hikes that it offers, which is the hike to Laguna Torre. It's recommended to do at sunrise. I didn't get a chance to do it, but keep that in mind if that does end up being an option for you. I think what struck me was just how silent and motionless this hike was. So kind of reminding me of probably what it's like in Decatur and certainly what it's like here in Evanston. Let's go on a little winter walk. It's amazing to hike for 4 hours and only come across a handful of backpackers during the day. You just really get to be at peace, alone with yourself, your thoughts, and it's very meditative. Hiking is for me, and really has become a great hobby of mine, along with photography, as I travel around different parts of the world. This is what the lagoon looked like for me. Not so exciting, of course, covered with snow and totally frozen. If you do get to enjoy it at sunrise during the summer, this is closer to what you'll experience. So, you know, I did go to Patagonia in the winter. Small sacrifices, maybe not always seeing everything at its ideal phase, but few people got to see what I've experienced in Patagonia in the heart of winter. So some positives to be illuminated there as well. One of the important hikes, Pligue Tumbado. Now this is a bit more intense at about 8 hours. It's a bit confusing too. When I do these hikes, usually I have good directional sense. This one was not marked as clearly as some other ones. The reward of your labors is a beautiful view of the Fitzroy Towers, which we'll see shortly here. Now, it is totally exposed to the wind, so you're just going to get very few trees around you. So certainly bundle up and layer up no matter what season you are doing Pligue Tumbado. Here, 100-million-year-old marine fossils have been discovered, and that is just impossible for me to wrap my mind around. Not recommended to do when it's snowy, so you can see I kindly disregarded that advice, but I was kind of given the thumbs up by my hostel owner that as long as I took my time and used common sense, that it would be okay. On the right are tracks of a puma, and I thought, oh cool, there was a puma here not too recently. Well, about 10 minutes after I took this picture on the right, I saw, I believe, that very puma from about 100 yards away. It saw me, I saw it. Fortunately, it ran in the total opposite direction. I think my heart leapt out of my chest. I mean, it was probably hungry. So gosh, it's hard to imagine what could have happened. Fortunately, I'm here talking to you tonight. I didn't come across any other travelers during this 8 hours round trip of Plig Tumbado. And of course, these purple mountains, getting to enjoy them from above. And you kind of can't believe you're there. Again, my hands were practically falling off as I quickly took these pictures with my iPhone. Thank goodness I, pushed through, because it's really great to see them and fortunately get to share them with you. The most famous hike of this part of Patagonia is Laguna de los Tres. So it's another full day experience. Here you're gonna get the closest view possible of the Fitzroy Towers, which are in the very background there. And of course, in the foreground here, we have Laguna de los Tres. Incidentally, this is the most steps I've ever accumulated in a 3-day consecutive period, about 35,000 steps each day, 15 miles, and about 250 flights of stairs, if you want to call them stairs, going up. So, and down actually as well. And stairs, I wish they were more rocky, slippery, uneven surfaces, quite slippery and dangerous. This hike was as I kind of navigated it. So pure ice sheets, just going kind of steep at certain points into snowy drifts. So this was one of the only times my boots kind of failed me. I had bought waterproof boots and they didn't quite do their job here. Now, as you return, the sun is setting and you just see it kind of light up the golden grasslands, those Fitzroy Towers, of course. And I love even how these mosses in the direct foreground here are almost neon with how the sunlight is hitting them. You might be curious about the animals of Patagonia. So I wanted to tell you that in Patagonia, there are mammals that are both native and mammals that had been introduced by the settlers, including European rabbits, beavers, and muskrats. I want to focus on the native animals. So we have the guanaco in this picture. This is a cousin of the llama, as well as camel. There is a puma, not the one that I saw, but indeed it looked like that. The Patagonian fox, and even a cousin of the beaver, the Magellanic tuco. Kind of looks like a prairie dog too, a little bit to me. Birds along the way, I saw these austral parakeets in El Chalten along one of the trails that I had just described to you. Green-backed firecrowns, it's always exciting to spot one of these. Giant Andean condors, which are endangered, but what an incredible wingspan they have as they're hovering above. And even Chilean flamingos. And lastly, marine life. This is the southern right whale. Beautiful, majestic creature underwater. You might remember the elephant seals from the Beagle Channel tour that we took in Ushuaia. And of course, the Magellanic penguins from Isla Magdalena. So we are slowly making our way north. I want to focus on the final 4 stops that we have of the evening before I get to my takeaways and questions for you. Let's take a quick pick stop in Los Antiguos. This is in Argentina. And take a look just for a second at these hands, and I'll explain kind of the importance of them in the next slide. It's at Cueva de los Manos. And if you take a look on the left, you'll see what look like guanaco. And of course the handprints on the right. So fortunately, this is also UNESCO listed. It depicts the hunting scenes. So you can kind of put one and one together that they primarily hunted guanacos, the native locals who had been inhabiting this area since 8000 BC. And it's negative images of these hands. So if you can imagine these bone-made pipes in the mouths of the locals, they probably were holding it with their right hand while their left hand is pressed up against the cave wall. And then the paint is sort of blown out like you might blow out of a straw, for example, and sort of spray paint over the hands. It's truly amazing that these are in such great shape, so well preserved, about 10,000 years later. One of my favorite parts of traveling is food and drink. And I wanted to kind of tell you a bit about what it's like to eat and drink in Patagonia. They live on their local ingredients and they're very proud to locally source so much of their food. A lot of this is by necessity, simply because it is so remote and difficult to import anything from anywhere. They have a very similar palate to the porteños, which are the locals of Buenos Aires. They love their grilled meats, their breads, pastas, wines. In particular in Patagonia, they like deer and boar. And also yerba mate. And I'm gonna hold up a mate chalice live here. If you have your screen able to see my talking head, you'll see the straw. They basically just pour the yerba tea directly into the bottom, not in a tea bag, followed by hot water. And then this is the straw they sip out of. It's a metal straw, and you can kind of see it's filtered. So that way, of course, they're not drinking up the tea leaves. And this is very much a community activity that they enjoy in Patagonia. Sipping the tea, passing it to their friend, having conversations, telling jokes. Continuing to fill up the hot water, adding tea, very just extremely a local habit, and then really a ritual in a lot of ways. They're big seafood fans, so I fit right in, being one myself. That's king crab on the left at one of the restaurants that I enjoyed. This one was in Ushuaia. Chef Freddy created a wonderful dish of trout topped with crab meat. You have not been to Patagonia if you have not enjoyed Cordero al Payo, and this is lamb. It's the most traditional meat of Patagonia, and its unique climate and geographical conditions produce this high quality lamb. And it's very simple. They roast it on a stick over an open fire, lightly seasoned with salt, and it cooks for hours and hours. So again, this is very much a group activity where family and friends are sitting around the fire. They're talking, they're eating little snacks, they're having maybe a glass of wine or two or three. It's just a great way to come together. And I think that means a bit more, 11 months into the coronavirus, just how really special that is. You might be surprised too about craft beer. Patagonia is famous for it. And it's because when the Germans were a factor in colonizing Patagonia, they also brought with them their brewmaster skills. Today, there's almost 100 microbreweries dotted all throughout Patagonia, in particular the northern part. All their ingredients, the hops, the barley, the water, 100% locally sourced. And locals will tell you they have the best beer in Latin America. I've been to about a dozen countries myself in the region, including all the way up to Nicaragua, if we're going from south to north. And I would have to give Patagonia the edge on the beer. Similarly, wine does quite well here because of the climate, temperature, and sunlight. It's sort of a perfect storm. And the wines here that do particularly well are Pinot Noir and Malbec. You're going to get really crisp, expressive, and fruity wines with good acidity. And you can see Lily and Melanie from earlier in the evening. There we are enjoying a glass of what else but Argentine Malbec. I love that wine is so cheap in Patagonia. It's no more than $8 a bottle, but most bottles could be $3 to $5 in any supermarket. markets. Of course, you're using Argentine pesos or Chilean pesos. Now let's go to Bariloche in Argentina. The full name is San Carlos de Bariloche, so the locals just call it Bariloche. However, you'll see it listed with the full name. It's a popular destination for Argentine high school graduates who spend a full week of skiing, trekking, and of course, partying. Argentines are famously full of energy. They never sleep. I don't know where they get their reserves of energy, but what a great way to graduate high school, to just party in one of the most beautiful parts of their country. And get some great views too from top Cerro Alto, which is the famous mountain in Bariloche. They're also famous for chocolate and ice cream in Bariloche. So many chocolaterias as well as ice cream parlors all throughout the cute, charming town of Bariloche. And I got to experience this with my friend Charlie, who I met in the hostels. I should say in the hostel that I stayed in at Bariloche, where you can try dulce de leche ice cream. This is the most famous caramel-infused flavor of Argentina. They are putting dulce de leche, it's almost like a liquid caramel. They might smear it on their toast, they might drizzle it over some savory items possibly, or in this case, of course, infuse it into some ice cream. Definitely delicious, and I just closed my eyes when it came to the counting of the calories portion, because come on, you're on the other side of the world, enjoy yourself. Now, as far as seasons and climate are concerned, basically because Patagonia is in the southern hemisphere, they have the opposite seasons of what we do here. So spring for them is October through November. Lots of daylight, budding flowers, and unpredictable weather, but generally good days as opposed to bad. Summer, which is the high season, is December through January. Of course, it's the most expensive time because it's high season, and it's actually recommended to book almost everything in advance, just because it does, the tours get snatched up really quickly, even accommodation does. 16 hours of daylight, I'm certainly yearning for that here. And it is basically the ideal climate, maybe 65 to 80 degree days on a consistent basis in the summer. Autumn, that's basically what they're in now, goes until April. It's the end of the high season, so sort of the shoulder season, as it were. Leaves are changing. I was kind of lucky to get kind of the tail end of autumn with some of my pictures like this one on the right-hand side. It could be your last chance for certain major hikes because they may shut them down, these particular trails, just because with the snowy conditions, it could just become too dangerous to do so. And it can get between freezing to maybe 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Winter, which is actually the majority of their season, May through September, you can see there, it is the low season, so it's going to be the cheapest. But a benefit of this is that there are fewer people. And of course, I traveled Patagonia during this time. And I think part of why this presentation is unique is just because, yes, it's hard to get to Patagonia, but when do most people go? The summer. Well, I kind of went even more remote and more obscure by doing this in the winter. So part of this was accidental, but the more research I did ahead of time, the more I realized winter is actually a great time to go there. You just have to bundle up. You might not get to do every single hike, but I think you can see I did quite well for the situation that I had before me. Going to Puerto Varas, now we're in Chile again. And Volcán Azorno. Now this is of course a volcano. It's about 8,700 feet. It's dormant. However, there were about close to a dozen eruptions in a 300-year period leading up to the mid 1800s. It is just considered, the symbol of their local landscape, and it is known for having a striking resemblance to Mount Fuji. I'd agree with that claim. You can also climb the volcano. I didn't do this, I only did the base hike. If you do so, permit is required. You're gonna climb some ice, scale some slippery portions there. You can do it alone or with a hired guide. Summer would be prime time to do that. And as far as accommodation is concerned, you can stay in luxury hotels in Patagonia or more basic accommodations. You can also live like a local and stay in Airbnbs. But what I did on a backpacker's budget, I stayed in hostels, which were mostly family-owned homes. I was able to scope these out ahead of time on the Hostel World app, which was so helpful because backpackers from all over the world rate these different hostels based on things like cleanliness, security, location, and staff. So how great to meet some like-minded travelers from all over the world. And really these staffers have your best interests at heart. They want you to enjoy their local landscape, to get the most out of your time in Patagonia. If you don't mind sharing a bedroom with maybe 3 or 5 other people, you are going to save so much money staying in hostels as opposed to hotels. I'm pretty social. I have earplugs. I have ways to drown out some of the snoring, but I do understand some travelers simply either don't want to deal with it or are very sensitive sleepers. Now we have money. I thought this was important to mention. I wouldn't say that ATMs are plentiful in Patagonia, but it was not a problem. The Chilean peso and Argentine peso, of course, those are the currencies you're dealing with. We have the Chilean on the right now, and of course, I'm going to change the picture so you can see the Argentine peso. I think what I like about this banknote in particular, the Argentines don't put political figures on their money. Instead, they put artists, they put poets, authors, and I think that's just such a refreshing approach to printing money. I made Patagonia work for about $100 a day, a little more or a little less, but you can see a beer costs a couple bucks. Empanadas, which are street food, it's like a fried pie of meat or seafood or vegetables, maybe $1 or $2. Steak dinner with a glass of wine might run you 20 bucks after tip and tax. And of course, accommodation staying in one of those budget-friendly hostels, about $20 a night. Of course, the rest of that balance might be from the bus ride or trying to think what else. Oh, of course, the cost of a tour, which could be as cheap as $20 to frankly, $300. I mean, it's all over the place depending on your needs and your budget. Now, Pucón is technically not a part of Patagonia, but I wanted to throw it in here as a bonus for you because this was the most difficult climb of my life, and it was at Volcán Villarrica, not too far outside of the Pucón city center. And you see it only took about 5.5 hours, maybe 6, but it was so strenuous because of the elevation change and the fierce cold. You have to have a guide for this hike, and they give you the full Monty. I'd never used a pickaxe in my life. I was barely familiar with crampons for my boots, to not slip and fall. Many winter layers that still didn't do the trick for me. And tours here are often canceled due to cloud cover or volcanic activity. So I was lucky that my one and only day that I could do it, it was close to ideal conditions. I met a guy there who, this was his 4th attempt, and it had been canceled the 3 prior times that he had attempted. So I guess 4th time's the charm for him. And that almost makes it look easy. It was very vertical parts of the volcano, frozen ice, deep snow, no paths. I mean, you're making your path as you ascend to the top of the volcano. It's also one of Chile's most active volcanoes. It erupted as recently as about 5 years ago, and it has an active lava lake in its crater. And as tough and frankly sometimes miserable as this climb was, the beautiful view atop Volcán Villarrica. And that is that plume of smoke directly from the crater. That's about as close as they allow us to get to the smoke, just because, of course, that could damage your lungs. But then, the fun part, you get to sled down the volcano. So it only takes about an hour and a half to go down. And there I am with a smile on my face, as freezing cold as I was. And that really does it. That's kind of the sunset of our time in Patagonia together. And now, of course, homeward bound. There's no airport in Pucón, so my choice was to take a 10-hour bus ride north to Santiago to sort of be reintroduced to society. However, you could backtrack to Puerto Montt and then fly to Santiago, but I just didn't really have the money, and I did have the time, so I took the bus, and it was actually quite nice. I mean, little snow-capped mountains in the background, hills in the foreground, and just, kind of a great way to unwind from Patagonia. They might just be pins in a map now, but of course it means so much more to me than just that picture there. So what are my takeaways for you? Spanish, you need to learn it if you're going to Patagonia. It's widely spoken, especially in these remote, tiny towns. They'll try to speak English, but you really need to do your due diligence and speak their language. Very welcoming and kind people, generous, opening their homes, their hearts, buying you a cup of coffee or maybe mate tea. They live off of the land and they're thriving as a result. So of course there's this slower pace of life that they're used to that maybe we in America are not. And that was a difficult adjustment for me at times, to go with the flow, to realize that not everything is on a Swiss clock kind of timing, and to just kick back and relax and really embrace their lifestyle. I will say too that Patagonia attracts a certain type of traveler. I met a lot of very athletic, worldly, open people who are risk takers and frankly daredevils. It is expensive, as I've alluded to, but well worth it. Do not let the price tag hold you back. Just with a little savings and preparation, you can do it for not an insane amount of money. It is the road less traveled, and you're going to reap those rewards tenfold just by putting yourself out there and being open to some difficult hikes and maybe some more challenging terrains. I would put it as a contender for the most beautiful place in the world that I've been so far. You might be curious about what I'm up to. I was supposed to be teaching English in Japan, but that's been postponed indefinitely. Hopefully I'll get to Japan at some point, but for now I teach English classes online to kids who live in China. So I do that in sort of a Zoom similar format. I tutor second graders who live in Evanston. And I also, of course, get to do these travel presentations and network with other well-traveled folks like yourselves. I would love to keep in touch. I've typed in my email address in the chat section. Here it is again for you. It's brmicha@gmail.com. You can follow me on Instagram. The handle is Mindful Vagabond. And if you go to facebook.com/mindfulvagabond, you can see a list of upcoming events, other Zooms and travel presentations that I offer in the Chicagoland area. So folks, with that, may your map be filled with many pins. Be well, and I hope that you enjoyed pristine Patagonia.
Thank you, Brian. That was fantastic. It reminded me, we were talking about the sunrise there. We actually got a chance to go to Banff, Canada, and I did the sunrise over Lake Moraine. I am totally not a morning person, so getting up at 3:30 up the mountain and then just sitting there in like complete blackness, I was going, why did we do this? But it was,
yes.
And then the images you see of it, I was sitting like right there. It's amazing. That's also the trip that I climbed the scree field on near Lake Louise. So just My kids wouldn't do
Good
it.
for you.
I could talk my husband into it, you know, in a couple of
I know. I think these talks just allow us to kind of reflect on our past adventures and to live vicariously even through ourselves. I mean, doing this tonight makes me want to travel again so badly. But yeah, I'm happy to hear that you got to enjoy Banff.
It was gorgeous. Canadian Rockies are something that shouldn't be missed. Maybe not as far as Patagonia, but you know, slowly widening my circle there.
Yes.
Did anybody have any questions for Brian before we let him go?
We do have some in the chat section.
Yeah, we've got a couple of thank yous over there. Yeah, and thank you all, by the way, for coming and enjoying this. It's nice to know that I can, bring Brian in, and that people are interested in what he's doing and being able to share all of this with you guys. It's awesome. It's one of my favorite parts of my job over here. So.
Bruce direct messaged me. He said, were you traveling solo and joining up with tours from time to time along the way? And yes, Bruce, you phrased that exactly right. I would say about half the time I was doing things alone. But you bet, if I made a connection with an awesome fellow backpacker and we happen to be going the same route, it's fun to be alone sometimes, but of course you get much more out of experiences by sharing them. Plus you can split costs of maybe cabs or Ubers. So there's sort of financial benefits too. It's not the reason you do it, but very helpful. And yeah, it just makes these tours more fun. So yes, good question. And of course, it's up to you, whatever works for you. You could do any ratio that suits your fancy. Bruce also followed up by asking, what were the stars like in these non-light pollution areas? Oh my gosh, I mean, the night sky was just sometimes so surreal. I would only put it up there with like the Australian outback as far as the crystal clear sky, just seeing every constellation, sort of that glaze of the Milky Way, and how it just is so clear. You don't need to do anything. You don't need a telescope or anything. So yes, do go there just for the stargazing. I mean, if not for any of these landmarks that we talked about tonight, just crane your neck upwards and enjoy that. And that's all the questions I have on my end. Does anyone else have a question? My pleasure, Bruce. And thank you also, Bonita. I see a couple of other kind comments. It's just great to be back virtually in Decatur tonight. So very kind of all of you to attend. And Alex, thank you again for, for having me tonight.
Like I said, thank you again for doing this. It's wonderful to be able to share. And yeah, Bruce is one of our locals that's gone around and done some of these things. He's done a couple talks on his hikes for us as well. So thrilled that he's here. And yeah, maybe I can con him into doing one of these for us too. It's like I
sounds like he's
lots
a
of
prime
pictures
candidate.
And amazing stories too. So
yeah. Awesome. Well, everyone, be well. Like I said, please email me if you think of something after the fact. That's what I miss about being in person with you, is kind of those little one-on-ones or small group chats after the presentation. I get all sorts of great recommendations from other travelers as a result of these talks. So, anything you want to share, feedback, criticism, improvements, whatever. Otherwise, hopefully I'll see you somewhere else in the world at some point soon.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.